Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Fernandes. I'll start off with how you have gone through the last 3 to 4 years, which I know would have been very difficult for you and all the other airliners.
Imagine this situation where you have 21,000 staff, 210 aircraft, and one day, and carrying 90 million people. In 2019, we were the fourth largest airline in Asia. And then suddenly it comes to a complete stop. Going to my office, which looks up to KLI 2, which is where we operate, and you don't see a single person. I used to have a television kind of showing where all our planes are, and other airlines as well. And there wasn't a single yellow plane in the sky or on TV. It was surreal. It was like a Will Smith movie, only it wasn't a movie. And there was no Gita's voice in the back reassuring you that all will be calm, or corn, these politicians who didn't finish becoming politicians. And kind of stopped in COVID. And so, yeah, it was a time that you would never have imagined, right? I went through SARS, I've been through bird flu, we've had terrorism, we've had all kinds of things. But COVID was something else. I used to say in my speeches, I've been through everything. Nothing will ever challenge me. And then I met Kenny Kim and Ek Meng. No.
Let's not get there, man.
Then COVID came along, right? And so it was something else. I don't think any industry went through as much pain as the airline. And there are many types of airlines, right? The government-owned airlines. Those airlines were okay because governments helped them. And then there's our kind of airlines where no one helped us, right? So it was very tough. And you can't put into words what we went through, but we survived. It's easier to start the airline 21 years ago with 2 planes coming from the music business. You imagine a situation, right? I used to sell dangdut music. I was the king of dangdut, right?
Yeah.
I still am the king of dangdut, actually. And selling Madonna and stuff. And suddenly you have an idea of starting an airline. You buy an airline from a state-owned company or a quasi-state-owned company for 25 cents. And you sign the deal 3 days before 9/11. And then 9/11 happens. But then you build this amazing fairy tale. And, I was very proud today that many well-to-do people, including Tan Sri Nazir Razak, flew to this conference on AirAsia.
Way to go.
Big day for me. He never flew on AirAsia, right? Because he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and would always fly full-service airlines. And then one day I received a phone call and I knew it went, "Hey, bro." I said, "Oh, is that MAS cancel their flight?" And he went, "Yes." And I put the phone down. I eventually led him on to our flight. But no, going back to more serious things, starting the airline was hard. We all came from the music business. We had no experience. But we built something. But restarting an airline was much, much harder. Much, much harder.
Was there anything that you could have done differently to survive?
Work for Ancora, I think, maybe.
No. You would have been worse off, man.
No, I mean, I don't think anything can prepare you for COVID, right? I mean, you go from a revenue of, $5 billion to zero. I mean, you can't have enough cash. It is really remarkable. We're still, one, I'm still alive and breathing in my shorts. Just to let you know, it's no disrespect to anyone. My wife sent my only trousers for dry cleaning this morning. And I thought maybe the conference would end quicker so we could go straight to the golf course. So I'm very efficient, low-cost airline here. So there we go. So what was I talking about?
Anything, man.
Yeah. All right.
But let me ask you, when you got
Maybe
on...
just give a perspective, right? So people understand this. We had 210 planes on the ground. In the history of aviation, no plane has been on the ground for that long. And so when COVID finally ended, it's ended, so you don't need to wear a mask anymore. So when it finally ended, sorry, I'm the humor section of this, having heard...
the most highly anticipated session.
No, but there is content there. To put back into operation 210 planes is an amazing feat for my engineers, who are the real heroes in this aspect. We haven't put all 210 back. We have 180 and another 30 odd more to go. By the end of September, we will have all 210 planes. Now, we've done this out of all our cash flow. And what I'm most proud about is, apart from those planes being put back, is we had to let go of a lot of staff during this period and cut salaries and do all these kind of things to survive, which was very painful for me. I've had two really painful experiences in my life. One is I lost an aircraft in Indonesia, QZ8501, and no one prepares you for that kind of thing. Second was COVID, having to let go of staff who did nothing wrong, who had served me for 20 odd years and been an incredible group of people. We're the only airline of our size that hasn't had a single union. We never had one day of industrial action. And to let go of those people were incredibly painful, but all of them are back now. Every single one, no one left us, and all of them are back on full pay. So that's a big step for me, and the next big step will be when the 210th plane has come back. And in between, Nazir Razak flew on us as well. So, we've come full circle here.
Now that we're in Indonesia, now that you're back on your feet, you've got most of your fleet back flying. We've only been able to get 15 million tourists from outside, which is a mockery compared to Malaysia and Singapore at about 23 to 25 million each, compared to Thailand at about 40, pre-COVID, right? And I'm a big believer of connectivity, and you're a big believer of that. Where do you see Indonesian tourism or international tourism going? Is it possible for us to foresee a future where we get visited by 150 million tourists from outside?
Yeah, 100%. I'm a huge believer. I've pushed the president very hard on visa on arrival, opening up a lot of airports. Before COVID, we were really making great progress. Bandung is a fantastic example. No one flew to Bandung. Absolutely no one. No Garuda. At that time, no Sampati, no animal airline, lions and tigers. And, why do people name airlines after animals, right? They got birds, lions, tigers. In Malaysia, we have one named after an insect. Really stupid name. It's called firefly, right? So yeah, go back to Bandung. Serious. So when I started AirAsia, I didn't have Kenny or Ekmeng. So I just kind of said, why don't we fly to Bandung? They're like 1.5 million people. And it's got a great university. It's got great music. Why don't we fly there? And the network guy said, because no one else does. And I said, well, they're stupid. Let's try, right? Let's try. And, we had a 737 at that point, and we couldn't park actually at the terminal. The terminal was the size of this room, actually. It was really small. And so we had to park at the Air Force Base next to Prabowo's plane. And because our plane was too heavy. And it had nothing to do with my weight. It was, because the taxiway couldn't take it. And so I said, no, we can do it, right? And it became huge. We brought hundreds and thousands of Malaysians. So from one flight a day, we went to 32 flights a day from all over. And Bandung built a new airport, right? Because as soon as we started and were successful, every other animal airline followed, right? And including the insect. But they didn't last long. We crushed them. and so
This is a tough session, man.
I know.
For me, at least.
I am a serious businessman, by the way. I do want to do a deal with your payment gateway. And now Bandung's built another airport, Kertajati, right?
Right.
So, we started Beluntung. We're big believers in Ambon, Lombok, right? I mean, the 15 million tourists, 14 and a half are in Bali, right? You have to go to Bali airport yesterday. For me, it was exciting, right? I mean, I love seeing, you guys don't like queues. I love queues, right? I love seeing long security queues. It's like, yes, let those people wait. We didn't like empty airports, right? So Indonesia can easily have 150 million, but sometimes you have some policy decisions which make no sense, and you become very Indonesian, right? I think Jay kind of alluded to it in the ASEAN story, right? So there's a thought, and I'm going to see the president on this, because he was the one who pushed all the opening of these airports. After COVID, someone decided that only a few airports should be international, right? Which is a real step backwards, right? Because no one wants to go to Jakarta and then catch another flight to go to Beluntung or Pontianak or wherever else, right? And so slowly we've opened up more and more airports, but there's still a lot to be opened. And so the feeling in Indonesia is that, more people are going out than coming in. That's absolutely not correct. You have to see Bandung for a start, right? And that everyone was going to Malaysia or Singapore for hospital treatment. I mean, closing the international airports, I'm going to stop that. People who need hospital treatment. And I'm take a very different view of life, right? If someone's better than you, then build something that's better so they won't have to go, right? I'm a real free marketeer, right? And if the competition's better than me, then I deserve to be kicked, right? That's life.
What do you think is causing the stickiness from a policy standpoint?
I think it's misinformation. I think suddenly the rupiah, everyone thinks everyone's going away, so the rupiah is going down because all the money's outflowing. That's not the case. Indonesia is a net inflow. This is a big country. This is the leader of ASEAN, full stop. And it's a beautiful country. It has amazing people. And, that it's not a country. In many ways, it's a continent. There's a huge difference between people in Sumatra and people in Sulawesi. Absolutely. And there's so much to see and so much to do. This should be the biggest country. There's no two ways about it. So you take the Thai policy where they are very pro and will do anything to open up tourism in anywhere. And then Indonesia, which is still trying to cope with dealing with the outside world, if I can be honest, right? And trusting the outside world.
You see that as unnecessary ultra-nationalism, protectionism?
100%. But it needs people like us to go and tell the various leaders that, with fact, with empirical information done by Ek Meng, one slide will become 250 slides. But where is my favorite man, Ek Meng? There we go. He's transformed my life, this man. But we'll get through. I mean, I got through before, right? And I mean, there's been a lot of talk about private industry driving, private industry changing, and private industry has to drive. It has to drive. It's painful. I mean, it's taken 21 years to get one country to allow us to own 100% of an airline. It's a poor use of capital, having inefficient capital structures. And if we go back in history, I mean, these are the kind of things that we have to deal with, which are nonsensical, right? Why did airlines not allow foreigners to own 100% of their flag carriers because of wars, right? In that they think that if there's a war, they need to control the airline to move soldiers around. I mean, that's antiquated. I mean, a long time ago, a president of Indonesia asked me when they were having another argument with Malaysia, regular occurrence, and there was talk about invading and all this kind of stuff from the press. And I said, why invade? Just send 10% of your population. You've taken over our country anyway. And so the president said to me, Tony, who will you support if Indonesia goes to war with Malaysia? I said, very easy, Papa. AirAsia Indonesia will move the Indonesian soldiers, and AirAsia Malaysia will move the Malaysian soldiers. We are truly ASEAN, even in war. I said, there's no need, just send over. I said, when you go and watch a Malaysia-Indonesian badminton match in Kuala Lumpur, you feel you're in Senayan Stadium anyway. Because there are more Indonesians there. But no, the reality is there's still a little bit of inward thinking, which is what I was trying to say in the ASEAN dialogue. You know, the potential is huge. And Hansri Andrew said that very clearly. People like me, Nazir, and Ikhlas, I suppose. Ikhlas is the first kind of ASEAN VC, which is really great for me. You know, there's more and more ASEAN things. We can't even get an ASEAN lane in the airports, right?
Tell me about it.
So the SEA Games, why is it called the SEA Games, right? Should be the ASEAN Games. And they said, oh, Timor's there. I said, oh, come on. I'm sure Timor's all right, okay? Just, you know, send a few Indonesians over there. They'll be happy. So we've got to start trusting each other and put people first. If you put people first, right, ASEAN, everyone in ASEAN will benefit from ASEAN being together. And AirAsia is a classic example of that, that we've created an airline that has benefited the people of ASEAN. And people don't really see whether it's Malaysian, Thai, Indonesian. They see it as their own kind of airline product.
You know, Charlie alluded to the fact that you were pioneering, you know, in terms of raising productivity, in terms of ushering new innovation within the airline or the pre-existing airline industry. Talk about that before I want to push you on your next gig.
Productivity. So, you know, that is the key. The key is people management, 100%. You know, the first thing I did when I joined AirAsia from a Dangdut recording was, you know, there were 250 people in 8 offices. I was like, how disjointed is this, right? And if you look at any airline, they have officers all over the place, right? Marketing is in one gang, cabin crew is another building, engineers are completely somewhere else. And it's the most dysfunctional organization. And hence, it leads to incredible wastage of cost, incredible lack of communication, and lack of productivity. And people just don't know what everyone else is doing. So the first thing I did was get rid of all the offices and put everyone in one office. And actually, it was our neighbors were MAS ramp boys. We took an office in KLIA on the ramp section, right? And I said, we're going to win this. Either we win this or we lose this, but we're going to do it together. And we're going to go through one door. And everyone's going to know what everyone else does. And then constant discussions. Every week we'd meet, the whole company, you know, in the initial bits where everyone would give ideas on how we could save money and be more efficient. And I'll give you a great story, right? One of the engineers told me, you know, we could save a lot of money if we landed the plane differently, using a different flap, using a different speed coming in. Because at that point, the airport had groove runway. So I said, well, just tell the pilots. So, oh no, we can't tell pilots how to fly a plane. And I said, why not? He said, because we're not pilots. And I said, well, you are today. So we at 12 o'clock, I had a staff meeting. So we used to end our operation at 12 o'clock. So I called all the pilots in, all the engineers in, and I was actually with the ramp boys trying to improve productivity there and how to carry bags, right? And then my PA calls me up and says, it's getting really heated. You got to come up, right? I mean, the pilots want to kill the engineers, et cetera, et cetera. So I came up and it was really heated, right? It was like a I-class kind of investors meeting. Too many pipes. And I learned a new word today, pipes. I never heard of that before. And MOIC, another good word. So, pilots were getting upset at engineers. And I said, guys, we're in one company, right? If an engineer has a good idea, listen. And that kind of calmed down. And I said, if you don't listen, we'll fire you. So, so that got everyone's attention. But net, we went from 50 landings per set of wheels to 500 landings per set of wheels. And at that time, it cost us 10 million ringgit, right? It was a huge amount for us. And so slowly, step by step, and then I led by example. Most CEOs sit in their office and command. I don't think you can be a good leader unless you're prepared to get down on the ground and know exactly what's going on. I can change an engine. I can change a wheel on the plane. I sat there for weeks understanding everything about the engine and the plane. I used to carry bags once a month and check in once a month. And when we moved from Airbus from Boeing to Airbus, the Airbus is a couple of inches bigger. In the 737, we used to just throw the bags in. Actually, not throw the bags in, lovingly put the bags in. But in the Airbus, my boys were saying we need belt loaders. It's just too difficult. And I said, no, we can't afford belt loaders. And so the next time I was carrying bags, they put me on the Indonesian flights. Now, people who fly with us generally bring their house with them. People who fly to Indonesia bring their neighbor's house as well, right? So it was a lot of bags. And I almost broke my back. And I said, okay, guys, you're right. I'm wrong. We go buy belt loaders, right? Now, if I was sat in my office, and I would have created a union and destroyed many people's bags. So I think part of it was I made all the management, CFO, everyone, know everything about the operation, understand what our staff went through, and got everyone in the staff to understand what each one does. And, we have an amazing computer on the plane provided by Airbus and Boeing called a cost index, which is how you measure the best way of burning fuel, right? But no pilot does it. Most pilots, they love the feeling of 24,000 pounds of thrust, right? And the maximum, and, pull the full engines. And when they land, bang, massive brakes. That costs Uncle Tony a lot of money. I say, hey, you got a long runway, derate the engine, right? And you'll send AirAsia, it takes longer to take off. But we can land a space shuttle on most Asian runways, right? And I'm like, cruise down and say, go speed up in your Porsche, right? Not an hour plane. And we have the best fuel burn in the world, right? Everyone knows what to do, but you got to change the culture of the pilots so they feel part of this company and that it's important. And I've had to change it in Indonesia, Thai, all kinds of things, right? So I remember when I went to Thailand, Paul will appreciate this. My former partner was a good friend of his, Thaksin. Former partner. Maybe new prime minister. So maybe partner again. Joke. And the Democrats never liked me. We used to come to Thailand with all kinds of shirts because we never knew who was in power. Red shirt, yellow shirt, orange shirt, green shirt. Who knows? When they were all demonstrating, our merchandise sales went up a lot because everyone was buying red shirts. So we had to change our uniform to black because all the yellow guys were unhappy with us. They all were protesting with AirAsia on there. So we went to Thailand to open AirAsia Thailand. The Thai said, oh no, we can't do this. The pilots refused to go in the same. So I make pilots and cabin crew go together and say, like, you're in one team, right? And I made the captain wait for the crew to finish off what they have to do, and they leave together. Most airlines, the pilots just bugger off, right? And leave the crew to do everything. I said, no, and I make the pilots help the crew out etc., etc. So Thailand, they said, no way, we don't do that. They're all ex-Air Force dudes, right? They're like, no, we're above. So I sent over a bunch of Malaysian pilots to show them the benefits of going in the same bus together. And net, we had 5 Thai-Malaysian marriages after that. So you have to be creative in changing culture. I won't tell you what happened in Indonesia because we're in Bali now. But, we had to work hard. I mean, I'm giving it with humor, but 90% of how we got our costs down to the lowest, and we're still the lowest cost in the airline in the world. People said, oh, it's easy when you have 5 planes, 6 planes. But we have a complicated operation, 200 planes, different countries, etc. But we're still the lowest cost airline in the world. I remember calling Herb Kelleher, who's the godfather of low cost. I read his book, and that gave me the idea of setting up a low cost airline. I said, I want to come and see Southwest. He said, no, I want to come and see AirAsia. How do you get those costs the way it is? And, he came, and he was, and Southwest was known for people management, right? But they were blown away. I give a story. Alan Joyce, who's the CEO of Qantas, came to AirAsia a few months ago. And he said, this is a very strange organization. I said, why? He said, everyone wants to take pictures with you and is nice to you. In Australia, they want to kill me. I have to walk to a bodyguard, but someone wants to stab me in the back. So to cut a long story short, productivity for anyone in this room is about understanding your business, but not from your big CEO office. It's from getting down and understanding it, understanding what your people do, being transparent, which is what we've been incredibly good at, having a very flat structure, appreciating people's efforts, and building a culture that could survive COVID. What took us through COVID was our culture, 100%.
Got it. You were on my podcast a little over 2 years ago. You started talking about this visionary stuff called the Super App, and it's now coming to fruition. Right? What gave you that vision, and what gave you that confidence that you're going to be able to take other people's lunches?
Yeah, well, we did in the airline business in Malaysia. No, I suppose, business is business.
It's a pretty competitive landscape.
Yeah, look,
right?
I've had 2, with all due respect to the tech dudes here, I've had 2 kind of, what do I call it, market distorters in my life. One is governments that continue to fund airlines, such as Thai, Malaysian, etc., when they really shouldn't exist, or they should really be restructured and run profitably. And to be fair, I think Garuda has tried very hard, right? And had done a good job until COVID, right? And I think the new CEO is doing a good job as well. And to be fair, I think Malaysian Airlines is also doing a good job. Thai is another story. But and then tech guys who were given so much money, as Tessa said, even when they didn't want it, right? They were given money. And so they become inefficient in the deployment of capital. And they distort the market, right? So they give away their product the whole time. If you've given 10 billion, right, to go and acquire customers, who can't do that, right? Give your product away. The tough part is making money, which now they're all kind of struggling, right? Oh, make money? Oh, we didn't know we had to make money. So now they got to cut costs and do all the things we've had to do all this time. So how did I feel we could do it? I felt that the bubble will burst for them. And so in the same way the bubble would burst for government airlines, that they couldn't keep subsidizing forever. At some point, the cash was going to dry up, right? And so I sat there and thought, at some point, someone like Kenny Kim is going to wake up and say, when are you making money? And then Ekmeng will come in, and Shan and all of them, the stormtroopers from Ikhlas will come in.
They'll ask for a put option.
Yes. And so, I felt, number one, this is pre-COVID when I started this vision, right? And 2, airlines have got one amazing asset, which they don't realize, data, right? Our data is priceless compared to someone who delivers food. right? You can make up your name on Grab and deliver food. I'm sure many of you have. You can't make up your name to fly. Well, you can try. And in some countries, you may get away with it. But even in those countries, you'll be caught eventually, right? So we have the best KYC. We also have a higher spend, right? And a more regular spend. So I thought, well, I've got a better data set, and I have an ASEAN data set, a Chinese data set, and an Indian data set that these other dudes don't have, right? And secondly, love us or hate us, we had a brand that everyone knew, and that most people, we had transformed their lives, right? I came up with a tagline. I was trying to think, we must have, I think the other thing entrepreneurs say, you must have a reason to exist. ICLAS exists to create entrepreneurs and help businesses in ASEAN. That's your reason to exist, right? So my reason to exist was I saw a percentage, only 1% of Indonesians flew, 6% of Malaysians, and 3% of Thais. And I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity, right? I didn't know anything about the airlines, but it was just, the brainwave came. I didn't look at how to build an airline, all those things. But it was like, wow, that's a good idea. There's a big market there, right? And so I came up in the shower actually with a tagline, now everyone can fly, because that's what we've done. Along with the other animal airlines, we've allowed everyone else to fly, right? And so that has created a very strong brand, right? Everyone knows AirAsia. I get out at Bali airport and everyone knows us, right? And so wherever in Southeast Asia, we're quite well known. So I got data and a brand. And then I've got 21 years of running the lowest cost airline in the world against guys who are not so efficient, right? So, people will say, can you make money in ride hailing when Uber and Grab and all these guys can't, right? Well, of course we can, right? Now, certain VCs, when they look at it, it takes time, it takes a network. I mean, if Kenny ran AirAsia, we'd have 2 routes, just flying to Singapore and Bali, right? Because he would say those are the 2 routes that make 15% positive MOIC or whatever number he comes up with, right? But you need a Bain dude and pay him $7 million to tell Kenny, or more than $7 million. Okay. US dollars. Okay. Now we're in the rupiah market, so we're not using you. We'll just get Ekmeng for free. So you need to build a reason to exist. I think Tesla's statement was the best, creating value from what you got. And not all of those will return the 50% EBITDA, but if you create something different, that's going to drive the traffic into the 15% EBITDAs, right? I'm trying to explain that to PE guys. Sometimes it isn't quite so easy, but Tesla did a very good job, and I text the PE guy on that, but he didn't understand it. So for me, I thought I have 3 things. Brand, actually 4 things. 2, data, 3, cost, and 4, people. Now, what has the gig economy done very poorly in my aspect, right? From where I'm sitting. The most important asset is the drivers and the riders, and they treat them the worst, right? So what do? We hire our drivers full time. We give them ID-90, we give them insurance, we give them, we look after them. They're really happy. They're very proud to be an AirAsia driver, right? And their productivity is 60% higher. It's no different from treating a pilot with respect and educating him, being transparent, so he will save you fuel. So those 4 things I felt gave me a credit. And then the 5th one is a lot of these gig companies are transactional. It's very one way, and so we are building a community, a messenger, content, etc., loyalty, NFTs, to create stickiness. So I don't have to spend gazillions on Google and Facebook and all these other dudes, right? So that gave me the confidence. Now, then COVID hit, but we still continued on that adventure, and we bootstrapped it because no one gave us any money, right? and we bootstrapped and we've survived. And now we can rapidly grow. We can really take on, the travel locals of the world and all these other dudes. Yeah. I mean, look, talk is cheap. We got to do it. But I believe we have a good shot at doing it. So, COVID was like the end of the world, but we took it two ways, right? I mean, you're a musician, right? When oil is high, you play the blues, right? When oil is lower, you play rock and roll, right? We'll translate that later. We said, look, we don't put our heads in the sand and cry about this, so we fight this, right? There are two ways of dealing with a crisis, turn it into opportunity. So we said, let's go build some other businesses.
You're making money already?
We're making money except for Big Pay, which Tesla will change next week. And we are profitable in the super app, or our logistics business. We never did cargo. We didn't understand that business, but we had no choice. I mean, one of the pluses of COVID, it showed us the logistics business on power. We took our first freighter last week. We believe we can take on DHL and FedEx, and we've gone from 0 to number 2 to SQ. And by October, we'll overtake SQ as the number 1 air cargo provider in ASEAN. So we've got an airline, we've got a logistics business called Teleport, we've got 2 digital businesses, SuperApp and Big Pay, and then we have our aviation services business. We stripped out. I had to see what was the value in your business. There's loads of value in businesses, but they're always left there. So I had no choice, right? This is Darwinism, survival. So I stripped out our engineering business and created a new company, ADE. We used a lot of data science. So we can leapfrog SATs, Lufthansa technique, because we're now doing predictive maintenance. We're using drones to inspect, because a lot of these guys are stuck in the old ways. They can't change, right? So we've leapfrogged. And now, we raised $100 million, and I really believe our engineering company will become the biggest. We looked at food and said, how can we innovate in food? We all have wastage in food. We can never work out ASEAN people. We either have too many nasi lemaks or too little, right? We never understand all of you when you eat and when you don't eat, right? And no data scientist will ever solve that. We are really a peculiar bunch when it comes to food. So we worked with a Dutch university, and we probably by next month, we'll be the first airline to have perishable, long-lasting food, right? And it tastes, at the moment, 99%, and we'll get 100%. It will last 8 months. So gone. And that now becomes a business because we can export that food around the world. So where you were a student and you were buying, you couldn't get sambal or whatever, we can now do that. So crisis leads to innovation, right? Well, I'll tell you a funny story. We're in Bali. When the Bali bomb happened, right? Every airline canceled their flights. And I said, we can't do that. We made a lot of money from Bali. We can't abandon them when they need us now. And they said, what do we do? I said, I know Malaysians very well. Okay. So we gave 5,000 free seats. You give a Malaysian a free seat, they don't care about bombs. Okay. We're a very resilient nation. Before the free seat, I'm very scared to go to Bali. Free seat, I'm there. Free seat, I'm there. And we sold the 5,000 free seats in 3 minutes, right? The other second thing about Malaysians is when they get a good deal, they will tell 50,000 people about it. So they went to Bali, had a great time, came back, told everyone nothing's wrong. We were the only airline never to cancel a flight to Bali. And we got awarded by the Bali government, for being the only airline that didn't abandon Bali during the Bali bomb. And when Aceh was washed out, we were the only airline to fly to Aceh. And we still do fly to Aceh. And every Achenese, there was a Achenese here just now.
Reza.
There we go. The anthropologist from Harvard. Every Achenese will always have something nice to say about AirAsia, right? Because we never abandoned them. So there you go.
Well done, man. I'm going to open it up to the floor. Anybody have any questions?
I'm actually from Bandung, and as you said before that they're going to remove the airport from Hussein, which is in the center of Bandung, to Kertajati, which is about 2 hours from Bandung.
Yeah.
And it's painful.
Hey, I don't run the Indonesian government. Complain to him.
Well, my question is, what is your opinion about tourism in Bandung after? I mean, there's a lot of opinion about that, but
Yeah.
I don't think it will be positive, especially for the Bandungese people.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Well, there's a balance, right? There's a balance. I mean, I loved in Malaysia, we had an airport called Subang, which was really a brilliant airport. And then they moved us to the middle of nowhere, right? But with time, development comes, right? That land in Bandung becomes very valuable and a lot of people want to do it. And then other people outside of Bandung, Kertajati area, the whole West Bandung area wants access to airports. So it's sometimes hard to be a politician, to be fair, right? And so they try to serve everybody, okay, by putting an airport, which is, it's not quite 2 hours, it's got better. Now he's really unhappy, so he's made the 2 hours when it was one lane. It's probably about 1 hour, 20 minutes now, right? I know my Bandung. And we just started flying to Kertajati from KL. So, look, as an airline, we want it to be as cheap for everyone to get. It's not just a flight. It's about getting to the airport. It's about coming out. It's about the hotel. So at every part of the ecosystem, that's why we developed the SuperApp to create lower costs for the whole travel ecosystem, right? I've got to be fair, and that Hussein would eventually be full anyway. And so also you want to try and develop some of West Java. So there's never a perfect scenario, but you got to balance it. You got to balance it. But I sometimes think governments throw away good assets. So in Thailand, I fought very hard to keep Don Muang open. In fact, Don Muang's open because of me. I fought really hard and said, don't get rid of it. And you? Oh yeah, you were Minister of Finance then. Yeah. I forgot. Yeah. We had that meeting in Hyatt. Yeah, correct. Yeah, you helped. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the Thais listened, right? And Don Muang's being expanded now, but because Suvarnabhum's full as well. And you're looking at a third airport, which again, we were the first to fly there in Pattaya, right? The Air Force owned it. And I wanted to fly there at the very beginning. So sometimes, these are great assets. Sometimes we have a tendency to just destroy them. I think now Malaysian government's going to extend Subang and make it like a city airport in London and a premium airport. So we shouldn't just give up. We give up things too quickly sometimes, and so there's a balance. There's a balance.
Great. Okay, Tessa.
She's going to give me a very low-cost payment gateway.
Hi, Tony.
Hi.
I'm Tessa. I want your business.
Yeah, you got it. Just give me the right rate.
Got it.
Very clear.
I'll give you the quote tonight.
There we go.
So my question is this, right? I understand airlines. Why you started it. It's about disruption, right? It's about changing the game on an old industry. But ride hailing, why? Because
I don't like Grab.
ride hailing folks are new industry. Yeah.
Okay, so what was I disrupting there? What was I disrupting there? The way they treated people. Right, that's what I was disrupting. I used to drive and I'd see motorbike guys with no raincoats hiding underneath the bridge when it was pouring with rain, right? So I always say in AirAsia, and we really have an amazing culture. Right? I mean, when I came to Bali after 6 years, you'd think I was the president of the United States. My staff were just so happy to see us, right? And so I thought I could disrupt it by treating people better and improving productivity. And Tessa, today's the second big day for me. My wife left early for the airport, so I had to take an AirAsia ride to KLI too. And the guy said, look, my dream is to be a pilot. And so I said, well, I've always wanted someone to be, from ride hailing to go and be a pilot. And they just text me just now to say he passed the test to go into the first. So he's the first ride hailing guy who's got a chance to be a pilot, right? And we've done that all over. We've got, we're the first airline to have female pilots. You know, there were no female pilots in ASEAN before AirAsia. And I remember asking my chief pilot, why are there no female pilots? And he said something that can be never repeated in public, ever. It was so bad. And I said, if a woman can run a country, she can certainly fly a plane. And, you know, we now have the highest percentage of female pilots of any airline in the world. And maybe just before COVID, we had history. Captain was female, co-pilot was female, all the crew were female, chief engineer was female, and all the passengers were male. No, that's not true. That's not true. It's just a joke. So I want to disrupt the way we treat drivers. And I think, I'm not going to say it now, but I think one of our biggest advantages is airport rides. That's the most expensive, right? Taxis rip off people. ERL, our train service, is more expensive than my flight, right? So why did I want to change it? I want to disrupt airport transport. I want to create a pooling product. Because I know 5 people in Bangkok, all Democrats, live near Korn's house. So when they're coming back from the win in the next election, they can all go in the same car. Look, I'm not going to say everything today because I'm sure there's some grab spies here or whatever. So, but we think we can disrupt.
Yes, Nikki.
So, Tony, you talk a lot about culture being the reason for the resilience and the innovation. And I mean, just would love for you to just dive deeper into what exactly makes your culture, you know, yours.
Yeah, I mean, transparency, 100%. Transparency, appreciation. You know, I know almost all my staff, right? It's a pretty flat structure. We don't have offices. We just have desks. Because everyone says they have an open door policy, and the door's always closed, right? So we just have office. I was very spectacular, right? We came in, everyone was arguing about, oh, my office doesn't face the cabin crew, this one doesn't face the sun. So I just came in with, you know, someone like Mr. Trinity and just knocked all the walls down one day and said, okay, now everyone can see everything. And that was the end. We had no offices after that. And we've kept that for 21 years. But I really think transparency, openness, humility. I think sometimes people think they're more important than they actually are. And that actually everyone contributes to the company. Not one person is more important than the other. And recognizing that the whole time. And you have to work at it. I mean, you have to work at it. It isn't easy, right? And so we invest a lot in workplace because that enables us to have video conferencing with thousands and thousands of people. Everyone has my mobile phone number. And a pilot said, MAS have been asking our pilots to join their union for a long, long time. And my pilot said, we don't need to, because if we have a problem, we'll just text Tony or Kamarudin or whoever else, right? So it is, accountants can't put a value to that culture. It's a huge value. And I think your biggest asset are the people in your company. And that's my job. My job is to keep unearthing raw diamonds and turning them into diamonds. To take a boy who left school at 13 because of financial situations and make him a captain. I mean, these are incredible stories, but you have to have that ability to allow people to have the confidence that they can do anything they want to do. So it is the single most important reason. It is, I mean, I could spend hours on it, but it is a thing that most companies avoid and don't deal with, is that the culture, openness, and transparency of the organization. Right? So when we had our plane crash, you know, the lawyers were all telling me, I mean, it was the worst day of my life. I mean, I was actually supposed to go out with Naze that day. And I get a phone call saying, you know, we have lost contact with an aircraft. I mean, you cannot imagine what that feels like, right? And then a whole bunch of lawyers come in and say, oh, no, you don't have to go. It's an Indonesian airline, and so it's their issue, and CEOs never go. And I said, are you crazy? I have to be there. I have to be there for my staff. I have to be there for the families. And I didn't know I was the first CEO in the history of aviation to meet
every single family and gave my mobile phone number to every single one. And I remember coming in and the world's press was there. There must have been 500 cameras there. But we were open and transparent. And everyone in AirAsia, all the caregivers through that period. And we're still in contact with many of those people from Surabaya. And recently we just relaunched that flight, Surabaya. And I invited all the families to come over actually for that. So I think transparency, openness, engaging, being, humble, and really getting to know your people is what our culture is about. It's not perfect, right? I'm sure there are things that could be better. But, so far it's tested the test of time in this 21 years.
For me, just add a little bit more. And in terms of building a team across a geography where you can't be in person, face to face with everyone, how do you manage scaling that culture across these different the region?
Yeah, well, I mean, video and a lot of messaging, communication, but then you get many others, right? The next layer, they all come out with the same form of leadership, right? Vera, our CEO in Indonesia, came from Danone. She's a Batak. I mean, she's a hard woman. We had to soften her a lot, right? And so, but she's great. They learn the culture. She's amazing. And so you come into it, it's almost like a religion. You either like it or you don't. Some don't, right? But it's infectious.
Okay. Well, last question. William?
Hi, Tony. After the Cholas abandoned Angkor Wat, I would not be too wrong to say you went back and made Siem Reap. What and how would you do to the next destination of that kind?
I mean, it's the same way. I mean, someone set it up here. ASEAN, I think it was Andrew actually. ASEAN has such diversity, culture, history. If you think in Europe, they're virtually the same, right? Not much difference. The English like to think they're different, but the rest of them are the same. In America, they're all the same, right? They're all the same. So, but you go from Thailand to Sulawesi, it's very different, right? In between there's Singapore, which is very unique itself. So we have it all, really. And so it's easy to promote, right? So, I mentioned Belitung. I think that's one of the most beautiful places in the world, but many people haven't heard of it, same as Bandung. So it's promotion. Social media helps a lot now. Word of mouth is still the best.
How about Lake Toba?
Sorry? Lake Toba, yeah. So this is one of my problems, that I had a flight to Selangit, but now the airport's not international anymore. Lake Toba, when I went up to the lake, it's like Switzerland. It is unbelievable.
Like Lake
Right.
Como.
Yeah, it's actually like Lake Como. We need some hotels there, but it's beautiful, right? It could be it could be Loch Lomond or Lake Zurich or Lake Como. It is unbelievable. But you need connectivity, right? You've kind of helped me in my case, right? So we had it, we were doing great. And then someone in the Indonesian government said everyone must fly through Jakarta. So no one's going to take a flight from Jakarta to Lake Toba, right? They're not. So promotion is easy. You got to provide the connectivity because, in Indonesia, Philippines is another massive potential. You can swim with the whales in Cebu, right? Palawan is probably the most beautiful place on earth. Honestly, it's unbelievable. And so we are blessed in ASEAN. We just need some politicians we need some blessed politicians. The good guys don't win. All right, I'll stop there.
A big hand for Tony. Thank you. Inilah Endgame.